Welcome to segment 3 in the Choose You This Day Whom You Will Serve series. We learned already about who God is, and the only way to the Father is through Jesus Christ, who paid the wages for sin, the cost that is necessary to follow Christ, but the great reward for those who do choose to follow him. In this segment, we're going to talk about God's enemy, Satan, and his three main minions. They are Baal, Astaroth, and Molech. And all three of them are highly talked about, not only in the Old Testament, but also the New. And so I'm going to start with 1 John 2, 15 through 17, which are going to you're going to see describe them and what they're about. So 1 John 2, 15 through 17. Love not the world, neither the things that are in the world. If any man love the world, the love of the Father is not in him. For all that is in the world, the lust of the flesh, the lust of the eyes, and the pride of life, is not of the Father, but is of the world. And the world passes away, and the lust thereof. But he that does the will of the Father abideth forever. So the first one we're going to start with is Baal. Baal is kind of the one who represents the pride of life. It is, let's get God out so I can come in. It's all about me first, about me. It's about bringing attention and glory to me and not to the Father. And that was who Satan was at the beginning. God created him, and he didn't want that glory going to God. He wanted it going to him. And so he's that get God out. And he's also the God of health, wealth, and prosperity, where, I'm to be healthy all the time. I'm to have this wealth, lots of material possessions, and just live a life of leisure. Not that some of that isn't good, but that isn't our focus. We do, as Christians, get to enjoy some of that, but it isn't our goal or what we're to strive for. And it's about building a name for self, bigger, better, more. And I choose to be my God. My life centers around me and what I can have. And sometimes we even will crush people in the middle of that. And in Jeremiah, he talks 7, 8, and 9, it kind of talks about, you're trusting lying words. You're going on and you're committing adultery, and you're swearing falsely and stealing and murdering. And so it's kind of like we're committing adultery with God when we're going after other gods, which even could be ourselves. And people will steal to get more. They will lie just so that they can obtain more. And it's kind of sad because in the end. Now, in 2 Kings chapter 10, you'll see there that Jehu came in and he destroyed all the worshipers of Baal. And then he went on to destroy all the altars of Baal. But the sad thing with Jehu is that even though he destroyed all of that, he continued in the ways of Jeroboam. And so that part is kind of sad as well. Like, he was able to destroy Baal and Baal worship and the worshipers of Baal out of Israel, but he continued to worship really kind of other gods. Okay, so now Baal's helpmate is Astaroth. And Astaroth has a number of names like Diana, Ishtar, Queen of Heaven, Mary. She kind of goes after the lust of the flesh, fulfilling those desires of the flesh. In the Old Testament, when you hear about groves, they are usually referring to Astaroth. They're the ones that build idols. They make images of their gods. And so those groves, they come and they worship there. They go to worship their idols in those groves. And so wherever you find Baal, Astaroth is usually right there. And again, she's about satisfying self and about feelings. One of the big ones she's known for is sexual lust. And there's a difference between God's design for marriage and that pure, intimate, joyful sexual relationship. Anything out of that, Hebrews 13:4 says that God will judge, because God created marriage to be the physical image of a relationship between him and his bride, the church. So any sexual relationship, any sexual satisfaction out of that design of marriage is and comes from Astaroth. So people living together, people just having casual sex, that is not of God. That's just purely to satisfy self. Another one is homosexuality, people of the same sex coming together. It is not of God. It is of Astaroth. Transgenderism, that is me being a woman wanting to become a man, or a man wanting to become a woman. Bestiality, that is people with animals. Then you have like virtual reality. That is people having sexual satisfaction with the internet or porn or a computer. That there's not like a physical person that they touch, but they go into this other world and it satisfies their sexual lust through that. Gluttony is another one. You know, that satisfying that feeling. I'm going to eat. I'm going to be glutton. And gluttony is just that overabundance. And it could be food, but it can be things too. It can be just having an excess of anything beyond what you truly, really need. Witchcraft is a big one, is a real big one. Things like Wicca, chanting, Torah cards, where these cards are going to tell you the future. Any kind of magic, crystals, you know, that you're going to get, there's this healing power inside the crystals. Yes, there may be things that do healing, but the power isn't coming from the crystal. The power, any kind of healing, comes because God created this to heal. Another one is alchemy. And that is a mixture kind of science and magic together. It's also astrology. Again, this is not of God. It's of Astaroth. Seances, channeling, necromancy, all of that is calling up the dead to gain more power and more knowledge. Like, I want to know something, whether it's the future or something from the past, or I need more power, so I'm going to get that leftover power from this person, and I'm going to call up the dead. And again, we're going to see how all of this has infiltrated every single aspect of our culture in America and in the world today, even our churches. Another thing is we see that Diana, again, another name for Astaroth, she was widely worshipped in Asia. Ephesians, that was a big one. And people weren't real happy with Paul when he came and he brought the gospel there, because a lot of people made a lot of money with those groves. Remember, groves are setting up statues and idols. Well, you had your people who made those statues and idols. Well, as God came in, they went out, and these people were now not making all the money they were making. And so they weren't too happy with that. We also see where King Solomon, he went after one of the gods. He went after many of them. One of them was Astaroth in 1 Kings 11:5 and 33. And also in 1 Samuel 31 through 10, it talks about after the Philistine killed Saul and his sons, they went to strip all the people, and they ended up taking Saul and cutting his head off. They stripped him of his armor, and then they went and they took the armor, and it says that they hung it in the house of Astaroth, and they fastened his body to the wall of Beth-shan. And so we see they were parading themselves and celebrating the killing of Saul and his sons, and again, bringing it into with their gods. All right, and the third one in this trio is Molech, and he is one of child sacrifice. And so as you see, as we take God out of things and we bring Astaroth in, now there's going to be some results. You know, we're going to talk a little bit more about this later, but an example is, you know, if I'm having all this sexual relations outside of marriage, I'm having fun, a good time, and I'm satisfying my flesh, and whoops, now there's a baby inside my body. You know, the womb used to be one of the safest places on earth, and now it's actually one of the most dangerous, because this child's going to ruin my fun and ruin me getting all this satisfaction. So I'm going to kill it. And that's abortion. And another way is people just trying to climb to the top of the ladder. I don't have time for kids, you know, so I'm going to shove them off places. I'm going to put them in front of a screen just so I can go about my business and build my name and my ladder. And so we also see that Molech is supposed to be the protector when he's actually destroying the family. You know, so I want to read to you in Deuteronomy 18, 9 through 14, because it was one of the places that talks about some of this stuff, that God is not happy and does not want them to be part of it. Now, we have to understand, we were in the world, and we used to do these things. And we're going to find out where the end of these things are. But through Jesus Christ, he saved us out of it. And when we're saved out of it, we're not to be part of it anymore. So this, again, I'm going to read Deuteronomy 18, 9 through 14. It says, when you came out of the land which the Lord your God gave you, you shall not do after the abominations of these nations. So in other words, when God brings you out and gives you this land, don't do what they're doing. There shall not be found among you anyone that maketh his son or daughter to pass through the fire, or that uses divination, or an observer of times, or a charmer, a consulter with familiar spirits, a wizard, a necromancer. For all that do these things are an abomination unto God. And because these abominations the Lord thy God does drive you out before them, thou shalt be perfect with the Lord thy God. For these nations which thou shalt possess hearkened unto observers of time and unto diviners. But as for you, the Lord your God has not suffered you to do so. In other words, God said, no, that is of Satan. These are his minions. This is of the world, and you are not to be of the world. And if you are of the world, 1 John was clear that you are not of God. So now I'm going to end with, where is the end for these gods and those that serve these gods? I'm going to read out of Revelation 20, 10, and then verses 13 through 15. Revelation 20:10. And the devil that deceived them was cast into the lake of fire and brimstone, where the beast and the false prophet are, and shall be tormented day and night forever and ever. Then down to verses 13 through 15. And the sea gave up the dead which were in it, and death and hell delivered up the dead which were in them. And they were judged every man according to their works. And death and hell were cast into the lake of fire. This is the second death. And whosoever was not found written in the book of life was cast into the lake of fire. So you see, the gods of this world, their end is eternal torment. But if you choose the true one living God, that you give up your earthly life to glorify God, then your end is forever, where there's no pain, no sorrow, no death. It's amazing. So in our next segment, we're going to see that there is a day when Jesus is going to come back and he's going to judge everybody. What we just heard. He's going to judge everybody. And at that time, it's going to be real and it's going to be over. So with that, stay tuned to the next segment and you're going to hear a little bit more about that day, what it's going to look like before it comes, and the conditions when you think like, okay, it could be upon us. So stay tuned to the next segment.